afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for coming to our program today at the Cape Fear Museum. This is Port City Playwrights' inaugural storytelling celebration, and you're all in for a really big treat. I've got a couple of announcements and things I want to share with you. First of all, I want to just say a few words about Port City Playwrights and what they do, what they are, what we are. I'm a member of the group, and it's a group of local, so Wilmington area writers who focus on writing scripts. So there are folks in the group who are writing screenplays, long-form stage plays, short plays, one-acts, and now with this program we're sort of adding a little new twist and bringing in storytelling. So the group meets throughout the year, every other week, and we have an opportunity every year for the folks in the group to apply to have their script, 10-minute script produced. So that is actually happening May 2nd, 3rd, and 4th at Thallion Hall, and that is in the Bucky Stein Theater. So you're gonna, if you come to that event, you'll see brand new original work from local writers, local people who are writing scripts. So I would encourage you to come out and do that. Bless you. I want to explain a little bit about the workshop and what we've been doing. Maybe if you have a family member who's been doing this, they go off on Tuesday evening and they come back and they probably have a little, extra skip in their step because they're excited. And so we've been meeting we met for 5 consecutive Tuesday evenings, and we've just told stories. And then folks that are going to present their stories today decided what their story is that they wanted to share with everyone. And so then we worked on, making those stories come alive. And I think you're going to be really happy and impressed with what you see. In the back, on the back table, you'll see that there is an interest form, and that would be something that if you like what you see today, or you think, hey, I want to learn more, or maybe you want to become a storyteller, sign up in the back there, and we'll get the information out to you, whatever that is. The other thing that's in the back that's super important for the audience is there's some little half sheets of paper back there, and it's a survey asking you what you thought about today's program. And we want people to give us feedback, good feedback, constructive feedback as well. So please fill those forms out, before you leave. We're also going to have a little nosh at the end, so you'll have time to eat something, drink something, and fill out the survey. Now, here's another important part of my remarks. These are the thank yous. Thank you. This would not have been possible, this program, without the support of the Wilmington Arts Council and the new Hanover County Endowment. We wrote a grant, and we were granted some funding to do this program, so we owe them a debt of gratitude. And we are also indebted to the Cape Fear Museum and Barbie Baker, who helped arrange for us to use this room today, which is not a small thing. It's hard to get space and hard to find space that's accessible for people and that isn't, and it's great because it's right in the heart of Wilmington, and I think these stories reflect the heart of Wilmington. The other person I have to bow down to and thank is my co-teacher, Elizabeth Gordon, who's in the back there in the green, and doesn't like to be the center of attention. However, she, this would not have happened without Elizabeth. She is such an organized, practical, hardworking person. She's amazing, and thank you. Okay, that's enough. Okay. The other folks I really owe a lot to are the participants, the folks who came and participated in this workshop. They gave their heart and soul, and they are the most amazing group of students I've had the pleasure to ever come into contact with. So I am so grateful to each and every one of you for coming and really digging in and doing the hard work. The other folks I'm excited to thank today are you, the audience, the folks who came out to hear the stories. The reason I'm happy that you're here is because stories are for all of us. Stories help us make sense of the world. They help us make sense of ourselves and our family and friends and our, city, our town, our country. They're a way to help figure out what is going on and then to share it with other people. Stories that you hear from other people resonate usually. So we will always hear a story and then it'll resonate with us. The topic or the feeling or the sentiment of the story will kind of bounce back inside of us. So the other thing I think stories do for us is break down barriers. Barriers between people who maybe have different ideas, different backgrounds, different ideologies. Hearing stories from people face to face is a powerful experience. So I applaud you for coming. So now it's time to get started with our stories. Yes. All right. First up today is Melva Brown. And Melva is a proud Wilmington native. How about that? Melva finds joy in the pages of a good book and a hot cup of tea while bravely venturing into the great outdoors. And yes, she is pretty cool. So welcome, Melva.
Hey, good afternoon. My dog Cookie died at the beginning of the year, and it was as awful an experience as you just all imagined. Cookie was, of course, the best dog in the world. She was a Jack Russell Beagle mix who came to live with me when she was about a year old. She had the brown and white markings of a Russell Terrier with ultra soft fur, the most precious spots on slightly floppy ears, and the temperament of a Beagle. She was energetic but not frantic. She was a striking and beautiful dog who literally sparkled. Out on walks, strangers would stop us to say how pretty she was, and folks driving by would yell, "Cute dog," out the window. She was smart, friendly, and lovingly affectionate. She was voted sweetest dog in our neighborhood's pet superlatives. She was just the bestest. Losing her after 14 years of wonderful companionship, love, and affection has inflicted on me a heavy burden of grief. One of the most difficult adaptations to losing Cookie has been the change in the daily rhythms and routines of each day. Why would I eat if Cookie isn't giving me begging eyeballs? Why would I bother going outdoors if Cookie doesn't need to go out? At what time should I wake up if Cookie isn't licking me, my all-natural alarm clock with no snooze button? Why bother going to bed if Cookie isn't curled on the pillow beside me, pumping out sleep vibes and adorable doggy snores? I do have a cat named Ashe. He is a black and white, super talkative tuxedo, pretty big for a kitty, about 15 pounds without any flab. He joined the household a couple of years ago when he was about a year old. He and Cookie got along enough. They weren't cuddle buddies, but they played a form of chase they both seemed to enjoy. Cookie would wag her tail while pursuing Ashe, and every time, Ashe was the one to instigate the chasing. They were united in their love of treats, and it was Cookie who modeled for Ashe how to sit nicely to get his own share of the good stuff. It was a relief to see them get along right away and tolerate each other, but it was harder for the people in the household to tolerate the new cat. Ashe did some messed up stuff, y'all. He would bite my roommate at least twice a week. He pooped in the bathtub fairly often. He ate the houseplants and then puked on the carpet. He chewed through half a dozen earbud cords. He tore out the weather stripping from the bottom of the front door bit by bit over the course of a week. He shredded the laminate flooring in the entryway. When reprimanded for any of his transgressions, Ashe would stare back with his big brown yellow eyes and yell back in short whines with plenty of sass, "Man, man!" He seemed utterly offended and appalled that someone would dare correct him for the things he felt he must do. I began to lament at each of his misdeeds. That is too much jerkitude, Ashe. Stop being a jerk. You are such a jerkface. This became such a constant refrain, I renamed him Ashe Jerkface on all official documents and communications. One day, my roommate, Fairbank, brought home a Peanuts Christmas-themed dog shirt because it looked like it might fit Ashe. Expecting the worst battle, Fairbank and I worked together to put the shirt on him, and he allowed it without a struggle. It fit, and he looked so stinking cute. There was an instantaneous change in Ashe. He began purring and nudging us for petting. We were completely flabbergasted. In less than 5 minutes, Ashe became the world's most lovable jerk. He curled beside Fairbank and purred so loudly I could hear him across the room. He began to enjoy lots of petting and sought us out for cuddles and affection. His jerkitude-filled behaviors just simply vanished. After Cookie died, one of my work folks said it's not unheard of for the remaining pet to come back and take on more of a demonstrative role now that the alpha pet was gone. I was skeptical, thinking, Ashe, a cat, really? Doing anything more than being a cat, even if he's a little less of a jerk? It was a surprise and relief to be proven wrong. The first day after Cookie's death, when I was incredibly sad and heartbroken, Ashe climbed into my lap, put his paw on my chest, and for a long moment, locked his big yellow eyes on me and purred loudly, something he had never done before. It was super weird at first, but once he settled in my lap, I felt calmed and at ease. In the same week, he started other behaviors he'd not done in the past. He began waking Fairbank, licking her face like Cookie did. Though the sensation was a bit rougher in feel, it was still a cute and charming gesture. He started greeting inside the door like Cookie did, and it totally derailed the despondency I felt walking up to the house, knowing that Cookie was not inside. He sat outside the entrance to the kitchen when I was cooking, like Cookie, wanting to investigate every morsel. Ashe isn't very food motivated, but his eager curiosity kept us entertained and feeling happy to reminisce about Cookie's kitchen duty days. He started going to bed about the same time Cookie once did, and I was grateful for the daily reminder to get some rest myself. Who would have thought that a transformed jerkface could become such a steadfast, loving companion? Ashe, with comforting routines, frequent cuddles, and loud purring, became an unexpected respite from my grief. Naturally, he could never replace Cookie, but he transformed the sharp edges and rough moments of my sadness and loss into soft, loving memories and daily pockets of jerkface joy.
Thank you so much, Melva, and thanks especially for going first. That's a tough call. All right, next up is our friend Jack Pierce. Jack is a senior in high school. I know. And he will attend Greensboro College next year to pursue a degree in theater. Jack is a self-proclaimed social butterfly who found theater pushed him to be his best self. So welcome, Jack.
I was always a little different. When I was 9, I was diagnosed as autistic. Bonding with people was always inherently more of a challenge. I was always told that not being like everyone else was the biggest reason I should be proud of myself. But it was hard for me to believe that. Then I got into high school. I was always a theater kid, so I was eager to try out for the fall play, not the musical, that came later. And I got a pretty decent role despite being a freshman. What I didn't know was that this would set off a chain of events that would permanently alter the course of my life. One very early practice in the run, our teacher was in a meeting, so we had an hour to kill beforehand. So I started watching an episode of one of my favorite shows, and this random girl sprinted up behind me and squealed very loudly before slinking back embarrassed. Before I knew it, we were chatting it up like it was nothing. Her name was Willow. Before I knew it, we were tighter than bricks cemented together. For the first time in my life, someone understood. Our friendship was solidified during the musical that year, which was Legally Blonde. I love that show because it's so fun. I loved working with the cast. I was one of the Harvard admissions officers. Throughout that summer, we were practically inseparable, texting near daily. We were never anything more than friends. I just wanted to clarify that. But still, it felt incredible to have someone to talk to. Someone who understood. But there was a problem. Willow was 2 grades ahead of me, meaning we only got 2 school years together. I tried to brush off my sadness about only having 2 years together. I tried to live in the present and believe we could maintain contact. That was certainly a trip, but all in due time. However, the following year, there was trouble in paradise. She fell in with this crowd of people, and at first, I went along with it. It's always nice to have friends, but then they weren't the best to me. Not openly mean, but really made no effort to make me feel welcome, and didn't do the best job of hiding they put up with me solely because I was friends with Willow. What's more, she was either completely oblivious or just chose to look the other way, and for the first time since we met, I found myself doubting our friendship. Then came the day I'd been dreading, the day of her graduation from high school. Her graduation was a reminder to me that she would be leaving for college while I had to stay in high school. It was hard enough that I had to compete with people who weren't great to me for her attention. It was hard enough that I was cut from the musical that year, which was Little Women, for those wondering. That was our last show we were eligible to do together, and I didn't get cast. That was somewhat mitigated when I got on stage crew, but still. Now we were about to be separated. That wasn't a big deal at the time, as we had each other's numbers. I just wasn't sure where to go now that I've decided that since she'll be gone, I could leave their group with no regrets. But I wasn't sure what that left me with. But I wasn't about to go down that easy and decided to work with what I had. And to my surprise, I was actually able to make friends pretty quickly. I've met people where, even if they don't necessarily understand me, they do care about me. That's the moral here. Sometimes what you thought was perfect has flaws, and sometimes what you weren't expecting becomes the most important thing to you. Well, that's my story.
Wow, that's my story. All right, Jack, that was great. I forgot to bring my Kleenex up, so. Next up is our next storyteller, Denise Clark Priest. With a strong focus on her 3 young children and her parent coaching business, Denise Clark Priest is no stranger to telling stories for entertainment and teaching. Now she's dipping her toes into the world of storytelling as a writer. Denise is currently excited to be squeezing in a full load of college classes into the nooks and crannies of her calendar in order to earn a PhD in anthropology when she's 60. Welcome, Denise.
All right, in or out, make up your mind. Kaywood was already sweeping the hard linoleum floors at least 3 times a day, and she certainly wasn't looking for more work. No way. Not after raising 7 kids of her own. So the first warning was, make up your mind. And the second was, get out and stay out till dinner. And if you want to make a mountain out of that molehill, you can go pick your switch right now and I'll give you something to cry about. Camp Meemaw is where I spent my childhood summers. 20 minutes from Elizabethtown, North Carolina, where I was born, and 20 minutes from Fayetteville, where most of my mom's brothers and sisters had moved. The green asbestos-sided house sat in the middle of 77 sandy acres. The sand, not the golden sand of our beach, silty, blackish gray sand, like the color of the way you might feel when you were there on that not very fertile ground, if you paid attention to things like feelings. My parents divorced when I was 7 and my dad died when I was 9. He was 36 years old and had one very effective heart attack. Maybe he grieved himself to death, almost a year to the day after his own father's heart gave out. That's what his sisters told me. Maybe it was the beer, or the cigarettes, or the pot. We don't talk about that one because it's illegal. Or maybe it was all of that. Left-handed type A kinds of guys just really can't take out as much as they can give, I think. Can't take as much as they can give out. So farm camp was not only free childcare for my mom, but the extra hands were also helpful for my grandparents when we weren't dragging in a bunch of sand. Theirs was not a farm of agritourism. It was a sandy soil, washer no dryer, clothesline only kind of place. We praised the Lord for sufficiency, but we couldn't even afford to dream of abundance. My brother, cousins, and I had a lot of fun there, helping drive the tractor, visiting pigs and cows and chickens, and digging worms for fishing in the ponds. My favorite was snacking in the garden. Okra, raw, dew-covered, pinky size, fresh from the stalk at sunrise. Even though I always looked forward to going to K-Woods, there was something underneath that I now know was fear. There was the seemingly constant threat of startle from gunshots in the woods. There was always something in season, someone ready and willing to kill it. And anytime we'd been to town or to my Aunt Peggy's or over to the church, we'd have to drive around the house before we got out just to be sure no one had broken in. What if today was that day, I would think? My grandmother could recognize the tire tracks of anyone who had business being there. And that mental encyclopedia was like a supernatural Ring doorbell. So it was pretty alarming when we pull into the driveway and she'd say, well, whose tire tracks could those be? And you know what else? There were black people down the road, across from Goldie's. Goldie was black too, and so were her children. My grandmother called her best friend, but it was never lost on any of us that she was black. You just don't ever know, my grandmother would say. I really didn't know. And certainly the worst was the angry and worried talk of my uncles around the dinner table. What would happen in 1995, and in 2000, and in 2020 when they would outnumber us? Hey, honey. They say the speed of light is faster than any other, but Grandma Evie's sweet voice and the smell of Estee Lauder's white linen always tickled my senses well before the sight of her smooth skin, pink lips, and her cotton housecoat. My paternal grandparents lived in town, pretty close to my own home. Papa Vance owned and operated the local Ford tractor franchise. We didn't see him much because he also chaired the County Board of Commissioners, and he was busy working hard to get the public library moved from the courthouse basement to its own brand new building. Are you hungry, honey? Grandma would ask. Now, she didn't mean she was going to cook. In fact, once her first microwave arrived, I think we'd have to struggle to say she ever cooked anything again. Want some grapes? Green, seedless grapes, and the apples, bananas, and oranges she kept might as well have been caviar. Because while we had plenty of butter beans, field peas, and corn from our summer labors, the only fruit we had at my house was in a can with heavy syrup, or more frequently in the middle of a Pop-Tart. It wouldn't be long before we'd need to go out and look at the yard. Let's go see if there's any tomatoes, she'd say, as we walked onto the back deck where the spicy, scented stalks were tied to the lattice. They were so good right there, those little cherry tomatoes fresh from the plant. And then we'd check on whatever else was coming up or in bloom, daffodils, amaryllis, hydrangeas, camellias. She was so happy to show off her treasures and happy to give me my first botany lessons. If the Bladen Journal was still in the paper box, we'd bring it in, straight to the kitchen table where she'd wipe every page, all 4 of them, with a Kleenex before she would hand deliver it to my grandfather in his recliner. If I don't wipe it off the paper, I'll be wiping it off the kitchen cabinets and everything else he touches, she'd laugh. Perhaps the real treat of being at Ella Brady's house was when my aunts would come home, one from Greensboro and one from Spartanburg. Aunt Jane would talk about what the Girl Scout troop was doing and how the girls were excelling in swimming and her husband's time with Habitat for Humanity each Saturday. And she shared her values as a mother. The idea that so long as they were respectful, she wouldn't care a single bit about the color or the sex of the people her daughters would choose to befriend or date. Aunt Carolyn would talk about her co-workers at the post office and her dogs, Bonnie and Clyde. And about Cheryl, her roommate, who had been her roommate for a really long time. She didn't have a husband, no kids, just dogs, and Cheryl. And Carolyn was incredibly gifted musically, and she always brought her guitar home with her. In the evening, she'd sit on the stone hearth by the wood stove. She perched there to play, and also so she could blow the smoke from her cigarettes right up the chimney. Every now and then, her sister would yell from the kitchen, "You want a beer?" Not because that's the way they talked, but because when you're from a small town and you move to the city and you come back, that's just funny. So she'd start with John Denver, and then maybe an Indigo Girls tune. And then my grandmother would say, "Carolyn, play a hymn. I'd just love to hear you sing." And then Carolyn would squint her eyes, and she took a long drag from her cigarette, and she'd give this little nod that I came to recognize as a giggle. Amazing grace, I am shit-faced from too much Miller Lite. My grandmother, "Carolyn, you need to go eat some rice." And then she'd smile at the rest of us and she'd say, "I better get to bed. Y'all don't stay up too late." Well, that was a waste because we all knew it was about to get really good. John Prine was next on the list and we were not going to miss it. So this one night after everyone else had gone to bed, my Aunt Carolyn put away her guitar and she sat down next to me and she said she wanted to tell me something. She said she was afraid I wouldn't love her anymore. I was 16 or 17 and I loved her so fiercely. What in the world could she tell me? Well, I suspect you all might know what's coming. I mean, Cheryl had been her roommate for a very long time. There was no husband, no kids, just dogs. I don't remember exactly what she said, but I remember telling her it was crazy for her to think that anything could change my love for her. Of course, I couldn't understand her fear. It was the early 90s, and I was a teenager in a small town. Well, we woke the next morning, and everything was strangely normal, as it should be, right? At Ella Brady's, the only fears were getting newsprint on the kitchen cabinets, or the TV guide arriving late in the mail, or falling asleep before Aunt Carolyn's best songs. Turns out her announcement didn't break the pretty dishes in the china cabinet. The books of poetry didn't self-shred like some cool Banksy piece, and the flower garden didn't just wilt. In fact, I noticed that my grandmother hugged her daughter as tightly as she ever had before she left that weekend. Even though my grandparents have all passed, I can see that many of the things I love about myself are gifts from them, and my own children's story is a confluence of these. They've learned where food comes from by gardening in our own yard, visiting the farms where we've bought portions of cows and pigs, and getting to know the farmers who have delighted in them as they've grown, at markets where they sample pinky-sized okra, baked goods, sweet little cherry tomatoes. They learned about community while running through our own home filled with music, from the instruments of friends and neighbors in the living room, with the dining room cleared to make space for dancing, and a kitchen full of people around the table. And you know what else they're learning? They're learning that everyone's rights to live equally and be loved unconditionally are more important than tiptoeing around those who live in fear, no matter how much DNA we may share. Thank you.
Denise. Next up, we have the wonderful and talented Logan Munn, who's a 19-year-old from Alabama, and Logan has lived in Wilmington most of his life. He likes reading, chemistry, photography, and acting. Take it away, Logan.
In my senior year of high school, I had a great friend group of 4, sometimes 5 people. There was me, a very tall chemistry nerd, into acting. My best friend Luna, who was your basic white girl, but in the best way. She was a Swiftie, an academic weapon, an actor as well, and we were like brother and sister. I swear we could read each other's minds. Then there was Cole, a lanky gay guy, into all the classic gay stuff, Stevie Nicks, thrifting, American Horror Story, and while Cole liked acting, he preferred tech. Then there was Barney, another lanky guy, but he was straight and wannabe emo. I've known him for a while, and he was always a little problematic, but we gave him a lot of leeway and too many second chances. But sometimes he was really good people. Then there was Penelope Noon, a wild one. She was a walking rainbow, wearing any and all colors besides gray and black. She had those bead bracelets on all their arms, from wrist to elbow. They were loud. And they had wild hair that they changed at the drop of a hat. Penelope and Barney were always the problem people in the group, while Penelope was just a nuisance every now and then, complaining about made-up problems and probably fake dietary restrictions. GERD. Penelope was quite the hypochondriac, and it was very annoying, but nothing to stay up late at night thinking about. Barney was the real problem. Barney would joke about shooting up graduation, about killing himself. He punched a brick wall when he got mad at a teacher. He even whispered in a girl's ear that she looked rapeable. While each one of these incidents should have been the last one, none of them were, and I regret that. We always gave him second chances due to his own problems and tried to help him. But sometimes people don't want help because they don't see the problem. Now you may be asking what the final straw was, and it was actually a two birds with one stone situation. After summer had ended, it was brought to my attention that one of my friends was a pedophile and a groomer. It's quite obvious who would do this. No, plot twist. It wasn't the guy we couldn't trust to be alone with women. It wasn't him. It was Penelope. The person, this friend who knew things about me no one else did, the person I trusted with so much of my life, I was immediately thrown into shock because their victim told me at 7:55 on September 1st out of nowhere. The victim texted me on Instagram. Hey Logan, I'd advise you to check out my latest post. It's about how Penelope, your friend, is a groomer and loves 14-year-olds. This blew me back, and of course I wanted to get proof and side with my friend. So I asked for proof, and they sent overwhelming proof. From the start of their online conversation, which began with Penelope saying, "When do you turn 15? Let me remind you, Penelope is 17 at this point, and was quite close to turning 18, while the victim was 14 years old and 3 months. Penelope and the victim exchanged lewd material and did horrendous things on phone and video calls. Every day, I'm a little thankful that the victim lives far away and Penelope was too lazy to get their license, because I'm not sure how far Penelope would have gone. I was groomed when I was younger, all through middle school and the first half of high school. I had grown men texting me, asking for my nudes, for my voice, for so much of me, telling me they needed me, that they might hurt themselves if they can't see or hear me. This went on for too long, and none of those guys will ever get repercussions for what they did to me, and quite frankly, I can live with that. What I can't live with is knowing Penelope did this, a person I trusted so much. So the moment I found out what Penelope had done and had proof of it, Luna and I confronted Penelope. Penelope immediately lied to both of us. And when we proved Penelope was lying and showed her the proof, she shut down, stopped talking, and walled us off. At that point, we both knew we were done with her. Or, I thought we all were. Barney, on the other hand, chose to stay friends with Penelope the pedophile, and as far as I know, he still is. I don't talk to either of them, though. But yeah, that's the story of my friend who turned out to be a pedophile. Since I decided to talk about this, I decided to ask the victim if he had any updates. He said he's received complete radio silence from the police and that as of now, there have been no consequences for Penelope. That situation cost me Penelope the pedophile, Barney the loser, and Luna. You might wonder how I lost Luna in all this. And the truth is, I don't know. After me and Luna confronted Penelope and we both ended our relationships with her, Luna asked for some space. Completely reasonable. It's been more than 6 months since that, and more than 5 since we last sent our last text to one another, and quite frankly, I don't know if I'll ever hear from her again. She probably wanted to start over. But can you blame her? I can't, and I never will.
All right, thank you so much, Logan. Next up, I actually am thrilled to introduce one of our Port City Playwright members, Rich Clark. Rich is a storyteller, musician, and sojourner whose work explores the intersection of belonging, identity, and legacy. His stories invite listeners to embrace their own journey and find purpose in the telling. Take it away, Rich.
Aloha, howdy, and bless your heart. Hi, my name is Rich. Those 3 greetings, they are my life story. I was born on an island, raised in the land of endless freeways, and carry the blood of Appalachian storytellers in my veins. This makes me a very confused individual. Hawaii, Southern California, Appalachia. Each shaped me. None of them claimed me. I spent my whole life asking, where do I belong? Maybe you're asking that too. I was born in Hawaii, but I wasn't the kid you'd picture. I didn't surf, didn't dance the hula, and lost most of my early fights with the ocean. My first memory at the beach was a wave hitting me so hard, it tumbled me like laundry and spit me out on the beach like an offering to the gods. But Hawaii was more than that. Their stories aren't told, they're lived. They say the bones of the islands are hollow, so spirits can move freely. My bones weren't hollow, but my head, my mom was pretty sure. Like the time I tried to catch a mongoose. Those things are tiny, angry missiles. And I thought I could befriend one. The mongoose thought I needed humility. I lost, and the lava rock won. Then came California. I hit the suburbs like a Faroe Island kid who'd never seen a sprinkler. The kids didn't know many Hoonie legends, but they knew marbles. I didn't get marbles, but I traded them like my life depended on it. And then the junior high talent show. They asked what I could do. My brain panicked. French horn! I'd never touched one. I'd never even seen one. But apparently I had the right shaped lips, which is weird to hear when you're 12. That horn became my passport. Music gave me people. I found home in time signatures and songs that we carried. But the question never left. I followed it to Appalachia, home of haunted barns and uncles who've seen things in the woods. I expected revelation. Instead, I got carsick and nearly died eating a boiled peanut. But then, I sat on a porch. Old-timers spun ghost stories, and everyone leaned in. Not for the truth, but because the stories mattered. Then, boy, an old woman asked, "You ever see the Lantern Man? If you see a lantern swinging in the woods, don't follow it." I asked, "What happens if you do?" "No one knows, because those who come back don't remember." And then I realized Appalachia isn't a place. It's a living story. Then there was band camp. It's a special place. I can neither confirm nor deny that sneaking a trumpet section into the director's dorm room for reveille is possible, and that French horn players are more mischievous than the mongoose. After all this wandering, I began to see a pattern. The islands gave me the whispers of ghosts. The city gave me the rhythm of motion. And mountains, those old mountains, gave me the weight of story. And somewhere along the way, I became a sojourner. I walk, not to arrive, but to listen. I'm alone on this road. I'm not lonely. All around me are fellow travelers. People carving their paths, telling their stories. And here's the truth. This is the only moment we are guaranteed. So, what are you waiting for? Go, tell your story. It's your birthright. Mahalo.
Thank you. I think you can maybe figure out that Rich is passionate about storytelling. Next up is another wonderful storyteller, Yolanda House. Yolanda is a Chicana from Los Angeles area with a love story spanning two Wilmingtons, one in California, where she grew up, and the other in North Carolina, where she lives today with her husband and daughter. Take it away, Yolanda.
At the age of 10, I was given a rite of passage assignment to find a ripe avocado. I grew up in Dana Strand Village, and as sophisticated as my childhood village may sound, it was actually an apartment complex built in 1942 to house war workers and their families. The layout resembled army barracks due to their similar design and the numerous windows. When World War II ended, the city of Los Angeles converted it into subsidizing housing projects for low-income families. The original design had built-in grass sections with cement pathways that separated the long buildings, each containing 7 apartments. There were a total of 340 apartment units and trees scattered across 20 acres piece of land. By the 1970s, the property only had 2 playgrounds where children gathered to play, but more often they rode bikes or ran all over. Families could walk their children to the Head Start preschool program or elementary school, which was also located in the village. And like any historic village, it was customary to share both belongings and struggles. The long rectangle building that held 7 apartments made you feel like your next door neighbor was your family. For many years, the units were not updated. So it was easy to see lead paint chips sprinkled on the dark wooden squeaky floors. Our neighborhood talks included new techniques of how to get rid of infestation of tiny roaches in every building. We often share noise, music like hip hop, mariachi, sounds, and helped each other with emergency needs, especially at the end of the month. On a Sunday morning, my family, 7 children, 2 parents, were invited to my Aunt Rosa's apartment. Rosa had joined the village when she became my uncle's girlfriend. As a single mother of 2, she qualified them to obtain an apartment. The first time I met her, I noticed her confidence with her bouncy featherback hair and her red lipstick gave her a sassy yet a signature smile. We were going to her place to share a hot bowl of menudo, a Mexican morning stew. And the best way to enjoy this Sunday special was to pair it with the tortilla or a bolillo, a bread roll filled with thin sliced green avocados. As Auntie Rosa and my mother prepared the table, they realized there was a need for one more avocado. Suddenly, I heard my name called. Yolanda, ven aquí, come here. That's when I was given special instructions. Go to your mom's kitchen and find an avocado that's not too hard, because that would mean it's not ready, nor too mushy, for it will be old. It has to be ripe, a little soft. I ran with excitement on the hunt for the ripe avocado towards my apartment, which was about 600 yards away. There was one avocado that had the most potential, yet it felt like it had some soft sides that were still hard and a few soft patches. My 10-year-old self thought, how can I meet the required instruction? I thought, what about if I bruised it to match the softer sides? What if I hit it against the wooden table? Maybe I could even it all out. I had fun meticulously banging and twirling the potential avocado. When I returned to Tia Rosa's apartment with my selected avocado, she grabbed it as if it were a diamond. She examined it and said, "It's good. You found a good one." Then she gave me her biggest smile in her signature way. Today, I can look back at my avocado selection and I see myself reflected in the process. Life has presented traumatic experiences from my childhood in the Dana Strand Village housing projects. I witnessed many moments due to the high crime, gang activity, and the crack cocaine epidemic during the 80s. I remember many occasions waking up in my pajamas, running outside to the nearest playground, and suddenly I was brought to a halt by a police yellow tape that read, "Do not cross." Other times having to walk around someone who spent all night on the grass because of being heavily intoxicated with drugs or alcohol. The playgrounds at night were used by teenagers and young adults who were caught up in the gang lifestyle, like Mexican Americans identified as cholos, wearing white t-shirts and baggy pants, whereas Black and Samoans would identify themselves as blood gang bangers wearing red bandanas. The gangs, they also protected the 6 parking entries with gun control and made quick drive-through drug transactions. Families would say how police presence was rare due to the fear they had about our dangerous gangs in place. On some days, the playground kids who played the game cops and robbers were on high alert. The children never knew when a real police car at high speed in our playgrounds chasing a drug dealer in his getaway car. Kids would often have to get out of the way so the real thing could be played out. My fears and uncertainty not only came from the outside, it also came from the inside of my home. My father worked many hours doing hard labor as a welder and suffered harsh discrimination because of his brown skin from his white supervisor. He often come home exhausted, in a bad mood, and yelling commands left and right to his wife and 7 children. I constantly felt tension, especially at times. We had weird, friendly guests visiting my parents. I can now name them adult predators with grooming tendencies. And in those days, adults would not talk about it, nor address the subject. But my friends and I, we will huddle up in our playground and give each other advice about how not to be left alone with these so-called polite guests or intoxicated adults. Life has bruised my spirit. And some of those, in some of those experiences in my village, I was immature and I wasn't ready to cope with the dangers and the fears that surrounded my environment. Throughout the years, I've suffered PTSD and low self-esteem. But in spite of my personal struggle, I have learned to hold up my head high and keep my heart filled with dreams and compassion by finding faith, hope, love from God, my Creator, my heavenly protector. At the age of 10, I was given a special assignment of what I called a rite of passage in my urban village. Like my avocado selection, I learned that my worth is not defined by the bruises on the outside, but by the goodness within. Even when life has pressed, crushed, and scarred me, there is still something good, rich, and nourishing waiting to be shared. I hold on to my faith and my resilience, sharing the good parts of myself with my family, friends, and my community. I can smile like Tia Rosa, evaluating the avocado as a diamond, and I can say, I am a good, ripe avocado.
Wow, okay. Next up is another storyteller today. Grace LaHaye is a former postal worker and detention officer who left her hometown for Wilmington to pursue her professional acting career. In her leisure time, she hunts down the best coffee shop in town and teaches jiu-jitsu to kids weekly. Take it away, Grace.
This is titled, How Mistakes Led to My Success. In 2019, I was set to graduate with a culinary degree, debt-free, on a basketball scholarship. I was about to add another successful endeavor to my accomplishments. Being the only girl out of 5 brothers, my struggles in high school were minor. My only youth fallback was a slight depression fixed by challenging myself in CrossFit and spending time on my family's cattle farm. In college, my second semester is going fine, academic-wise at least. I passed each class with minimal effort, and perfect attendance was routine. Academic-wise, I may have been fine, but emotionally it was another story. I was lost, confused, hiding from everyone yet more myself, distant from God, confirming to the public I'm doing awesome, but internally I was metaphorically on the verge of bleeding out. In a nutshell, I returned home, second mid-semester, with a concussion in the last game I ever played in my basketball collegiate career. Unaware, I returned home with PTSD from ongoing sexual assault and dark depression that I didn't even know existed. But even worse, I returned home with zero ambition. What's next in my life? I don't know. I don't care. I had never experienced such stillness, such silence. My youth vanished, gone. I'll never laugh the way I used to. I was emotionally hungover. I purposely overslept to make my living time speed up. Can I just sleep life away? I ask my deteriorating self. For the first time in my life, I had no desire to better myself. I compulsively deleted all my social media, permanently. I had built my social media platforms strategically for 8 years. I had no desire to be present in others' lives now, worse, my own life. I didn't want my peers to know I existed. My followers vanished. My connections and friends vanished. I wanted to vanish that quickly myself. Maybe I could. With the help of intense therapy, parents who never gave up on me, and brothers who always had my back, my determination to achieve new goals returned to my muscle memory. I no longer let shame dictate my actions. As I matured, I realized God had ruined my plans, so my plans wouldn't ruin me. Within a few years, I worked myself up to first-in-line seniority postal worker in my hometown, which is one of the most proudest accomplishments in my career. I soon discovered the United States Postal Inspection. To become a federal officer, I need a 4-year degree before age 37. Enhancing my postal career sparked my interest in re-enrolling in college to earn my bachelor's and become the first postal inspector in my family. The second college go-around has been the best experience of my life. I am grateful that I already went through the rough patch in my late teens. I know what coping mechanisms to apply when I'm stressed or depressed. Because I know how to manage my emotions as an adult, I am now fully able to focus on my studies rather than my struggles. I have been able to manage full-time college with full-time work simultaneously, something I never dreamed I could manage on my own. There's no reason why I should be limited. I remember working 12-hour graveyard shifts, getting home at 8 in the morning, only to wake right back up at noon to make my 1 to 5 college classes, then go straight into work the same night, non-stop. Never once did I think about quitting. If you want something bad enough, you will make it happen. I did not lose hope in my college goals when I moved 7 times within 3 years. Change does not faze me anymore. In fact, I look forward to change. A change in my life is an opportunity to learn something new about myself. Maturity is learning how to navigate whatever the hell life throws at you. I have discovered a discipline I never knew existed in me. Every day, I wake up excited to start my day, ready to push myself harder than I did yesterday. I'm becoming the woman I've dreamed of being as a child. Adulthood is harder than I ever imagined, but I can proudly say I'm leading my dream life by pursuing my endeavors. I've learned that if you want something bad enough, you will find a way to make it happen. If a door closes on your plans, don't lose hope. Go through the side door. If the side door is locked, go through a window. If the window is slammed shut, call a locksmith or the fire department. In other words, I did not and will never give up on my goals when mistakes and change arise. I've learned to think outside of the box. I've instilled in my body that successful people always get up when they fall down. Once I discovered my secret sauce to success, a weight I didn't even know I was carrying lifted. I now laugh authentically, a laugh that is better than the one in my youth. I've learned how to execute routine discipline. I am the CEO of my own life, and I take full advantage of my authority. I graduate this May with my first college degree. I never thought I would obtain a college degree after I dropped out, but here I am. 6 years ago, the year was 2019, and I was miserable. My outlet was lying in bed, praying wholeheartedly to become the woman I am today. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, and happy graduation, Grace. Well, we are to our last storyteller, and her name is Nina Davitt. And Nina's father was a Foreign Service officer, and Nina was born in North Africa and spent her formative years in the Far East in Europe. After college in Connecticut, she raised 3 children and now has 6 grandchildren. Nina retired to Wilmington with her husband Greg in 2019. She loves dachshunds and enjoys theater, sewing, cooking, reading, and all things French. Take it away, Nina.
The title of my story is Why I Hate to Write. My mother carried a red pen everywhere. Not red on the outside, but red ink. She had red ink stains on her fingers and inside every bag she ever used. She haunted me with her red pen. When I started school and had homework, she would wait till I was in bed, and then the pen would come out. At first it was underlining an assignment, like color in the lines. Then it got to heavier stuff, like wrong and you need to try harder. In 1959, my dad, who was a Foreign Service officer, got assigned to Paris, France. I was 8 and in 3rd grade. There was no room for me in the American school, but my parents found a French Catholic girls' school that would take me. My mother was Catholic and she was thrilled. Me, not so much. Nuns, uniforms, and mass every day. Not fun. The classes were in French, and I didn't have a clue what was going on. But you see, my mother was not only an English teacher, did I mention that, but also a French teacher. She loved teaching, but she didn't work when my dad was on assignment. So she took her mission to correct my homework in both languages even more seriously now. This drove me absolutely nuts. So I devised a plan. At recess or during study hall, I would get my work done and keep it hidden in my desk until the next day. Of course, the French girls thought I was weirder than ever for being retentive about les devoirs and not wanting to goof off. My other writing weakness was my spelling. I just never got it embedded in my brain. My mom loved correcting spelling. I think she thought the red ink and the extra exclamation points would drive the words into my head. On the weekends, my dad would write a letter to his mother and always asked me to write one too. My grandmother was the best. She grew up in a rural town in the Alps and spoke French and English. I would labor away, usually in French, and then try to get my note in the envelope, right when Dad was ready to seal it up. But my ever-vigilant mom would swoop in, grab it, and hemorrhage red all over it. Of course, I couldn't send it with red corrections, so I had to write it over again. So annoying. Fast forward to high school. Despite my limitations in spelling and grammar, I became a good student, and I was chosen to be valedictorian. But don't get too awestruck. There were 8 girls in my class, and I was the goody two-shoes, so the nuns all loved me. Anyway, I was very excited to receive the award until I found out I had to give a speech. Needless to say, my non-valedictorian mother saw this as a big chance to demonstrate her abilities. So she decided to take me under her wing and coach me in my writing. Credit to her, she knew I loved the writings of Kahlil Gibran, so she picked one of his short stories to start the speech off. But oh, then it was so painful. I would write, and she, lurking over my shoulder with her red pen, would correct me. She annoyingly fancied herself the next Hemingway. There were lots of you could say it better this way, and here let me show you. I was miserable. My dad, a frequent sympathetic observer. She probably corrected his work documents. I can see her charming the Marine Guards at the embassy to get in and sneaking up to Dad's office to put her red pen to work. Anyway, Dad would say, let it go, honey, she's doing her best, and don't worry, you will do fine. And then out of my mother's earshot, I know she annoys you, but next year you'll be in college, so she won't be able to do this anymore. Ha, fat chance. She thought it would be a great idea for me to mail her my papers from Connecticut to France, so she could correct them and send them back to me. Hey, it was 1969, so no postal service was the only way, no fax machine. Needless to say, I did not, and she did not. The years went by, and we really never discussed it. I did take a writing course in college that helped me regain my confidence, although the professor found my spelling creative and asked me if I was a big fan of James Joyce and his love of run-on sentences. My mom's red pen hardly ever came out again, although she did try to find my papers when I was in graduate school. And she tried to help my kids, but I stopped her once and for all. Finally, in retirement, she wrote for a local newspaper, which I know provided the outlet she longed for all along. My mom's been gone now for 20 years, but when I write, I can still feel her over my shoulder saying, "Aren't you lucky there's spell check?" Now I think of her when I write, and it makes me remember how much she loved writing, and me. So actually now writing brings her back to me. I'm sure I also had annoying habits as a mother, just ask my kids. I hope in time they think back on my efforts and get a lump in their throat when they remember that it was all because I loved them as she did me. Oh, and I never used a red pen.
Fitting that the title of the very last story was Why I Hate to Write. Because writing is hard and it takes a long time. And these folks did an amazing job, so please give them a round of applause. And we are going to have a little nosh in the back, so please, before you leave, if you wouldn't mind filling out our little survey back there, I'd really appreciate that. And then if anyone's interested in learning more about the group, there's a sign-up sheet as well. So thank you again for coming.
Dr.
I was looking at him, Harvey.
Got some good shots.
Okay, great. Thank you.